Okay. Good evening, everybody. All right, we're going to pick up where we left off, and hopefully I can figure out where that was. So I believe it was in Lesson 5, we're working on the cosmological argument for God's existence. And within the cosmological argument for God's existence, we have a basic form of logic that we're operating from, and that form of logic is called a syllogism. You guys want to help me and see if you can remember how that goes? So we have, in this one, we have two premises and a conclusion. So what's the first premise? Not everybody at once. That's supposed to be funny. No, the logical syllogism. Okay, that's the Socrates one, but we're talking about the cosmological argument. That is the second premise. What is the first premise? Okay, that is a logical syllogism, but that's just the one that Aristotle gave about Socrates. But we're talking about the one that's attached to the cosmological argument. Okay, premise number one is the universal truth that applies in all circumstances, everything. It's based on the law of cause and effect. Everything that begins to exist, so Jeff nailed it over there, begins to exist. Has a cause. Is this true in all circumstances? This is a universal truth. We could even call it a law, the law of cause and effect. Would you, come on now. Larry's showing them funny. Come on now, I'm going to have to move up here to the front row. I'm just kidding. I'm just messing. Oh, you took a picture of the board? Yeah. That scribbled up mess? Yeah. Okay, so this is our first premise. Then our second premise is what? Mike, you said it. Began to exist. The universe began to exist. Or has a beginning. Either way. There we go. Therefore, the universe has a cause. So what are we achieving by doing this? Okay, that it has to have a cause, not just random chance. So there has to be something behind it, because something just doesn't exist unless it's caused to exist. Right? Correct. So this gets us to there's different ways of saying this. Okay. The first cause, or the uncaused cause. That gets us there. And that means at this point, this gets us to a theistic universe. Now, how can we get theistic universe out of this? Yeah, it has to be something outside of that. So when we say it's outside of the material realm, what do we mean by outside of? What are the properties of something that was outside of the natural realm? So what was created, what are the three main things that we say that were created in the initial moment? Yeah, time, space, and matter. Therefore, whatever created has to be timeless, spaceless, immaterial. Right? Cannot be part of the creation. Right? And we know that not only timeless, spaceless, immaterial, but incredibly powerful because of the scope and nature of the universe, and also incredibly intelligent because of the scope and nature of the universe, everything that's in it. So we get timeless, spaceless, immaterial, incredibly powerful, incredibly knowledgeable, and also the other important thing is it's a personal being, because a personal being has volition and choice, and therefore chose to create. There had to be a choice to create. Therefore, there's a personal being that did that. So we get all those things. That points us to a theistic universe, a universe that is created by God. So this is what we're working with here. So all you really need to know are these three. If you get these two, this one logically follows. It just makes sense, right? So we say that this is the law of cause and effect that's stated here in the first statement, right? That's universal. Do we have to spend any time proving that? Yeah. We don't have to spend any time proving it because it's a universal truth. And candy corn is yucky. Universal truth. Black licorice, yucky. Universal truth. Okay, no, this is a universal truth. Now, the second premise is where we must invest some time, because we must be able to explain the universe began to exist. And that's where we spent most of our time last week, or a good portion of it. So as we're beginning to explain the universe began to exist, we offered some other scientific law that gives us foundation for the universe. Well, we have three logical possibilities about the nature of the universe. You remember those three logical possibilities? Okay, it's eternal, or it's not eternal and it created itself, or it's not eternal and was created. Those are our three. So we spent some time talking about the universe and the fact that it did in fact have a beginning. We know this because the first and second law of thermodynamics, that's all you really need. But there's a lot more to it. You can look at other evidences that have been found that prove that in fact the universe, that almost all scientists today, secular or otherwise, agree the universe began to exist. Where the disagreement is on how at this point. And so the next, so we do understand that it has a beginning, so therefore it's not eternal, so we can rule that one out, scratch it out. Second thing is that we talked about is that did the universe cause itself? And you could probably take this to 4th and 5th and 6th graders, maybe that age group, and present this idea, can something create itself? And they might, rustle up their noses and eyes for a minute and say, they're probably going to be able to figure that one out. It's pretty easy, right? Something can't create itself. And so we went into other more detailed things about that. So now we're resting on the third principle, or the third logical possibility, was the universe created? And so that is where we should be. Now, either the universe had a beginning or it did not. But all available evidence indicates that the universe did, in fact, have a beginning. If the universe had a beginning, it either had a cause or it did not. Again, we're back to our three options. One thing we know for sure, however, it is correct logically and scientifically to acknowledge that the universe had a cause, because the universe is an effect, and as such, it requires an adequate cause. Cause and effect states that wherever there is a material effect, there must be an adequate cause. Remember the idea of the adequate cause. We talked about this book getting knocked on the floor. What would be an inadequate cause? What example did we use? Yeah. A mosquito landing on this is not going to cause this book to fall from here. But maybe if my hand knocks it off, surely with enough force, that would be an adequate cause. And so there must be an adequate cause for the effect. And so if the effect is the existence of the universe and everything in it, then the cause must be something else, huh? It can't be something that's just, this has to be, its scope and nature just has to be astronomical. So, further indicated, however, is the fact that no effect can be greater than its cause. So, whatever created the universe has to be greater than it, the universe itself. Since it is obvious that the universe is not eternal, and since it is also obvious that the universe could not have created itself, the only remaining alternative is that the universe was created by something or someone that existed before or at the same time with it, that is, some eternal uncaused first cause. So that's one of the aspects of this, and we've already started to talk about this. B, or 2, is it must be superior to it, since the created cannot be superior to the creator, and is of a different nature, since the finite dependent universe of matter is unable to explain itself. So that's another thing too. The universe is finite. Right? When we say finite, what do we mean? Okay, yes. So again, we come back to the laws of thermodynamics. We understand the universe is going to have an ending if you just want to rest on that. And so it's finite. So if something's finite that created, or if the effect is finite, then the cause must be infinite. So that's another thing we can add to that list. Infinite. So timeless, spaceless, immaterial, basically all-knowing, all-powerful, infinite. Sure does sound like God of the Bible. All right, everybody up to speed with me? I said what? I said B and then I changed the 2. Is that what you mean when I goofed that? Okay, existed before at the same time, is superior to it, and is of a different nature. That should be where we're at. Right? Everybody good? Since it is obvious that the universe... Okay, I already said that. In connection with this, another fact should be considered. Now think about this. Wrap your head around this. If there ever had been a time when absolutely nothing existed. So if you break the word nothing down, what do you have? No thing, nothing. Right? If there ever was a time when nothing existed, then there would be nothing now. What do you think of that statement? I'm going to read it again. Think about it. In connection with this, another fact should be considered. If there ever had been a time when absolutely nothing existed, then there would be nothing now. How can we say that? Yes, so if there's no first cause or an uncaused cause, then we cannot, there has to be something that brings something into existence from that state of nothingness. Yeah, certainly. Right. Right. Now, so if there ever had been a time when absolutely nothing existed, then there would be nothing now, because it is always true that nothing produces nothing. In view of this, since something exists now, it must follow logically that something has existed forever. This is where we get eternal. So now we can add eternal to our list. Eternal, timeless, which is tied to that. Spaceless, immaterial, all-powerful, all-knowing, personal being, and infinite. So, everything that humans know to exist can be classified as either matter or mind. There is no third alternative. So, here we're going to spend some time. We're going to spend some time now. These logical syllogisms 1 and 2 are a little more involved. So they have some subpoints that kind of flesh out what we talk about, that we've talked about here, and bring in those first three premises, or those first three things we talked about, those three logical options, and breaks them down. And you'll see on the next page I provided you the third one, that is this one. I think is the simplest, and it's the easiest to get from point A to point B. But these are a little more involved. So everything that exists, so we're on logical syllogism number 1 in the first premise. So we have a universal truth, and then we have a second thing stemming from that universal truth where we must invest time in proving it, and you'll see how this plays out. So everything that exists is either matter or mind. That's a universal truth. There's nothing that falls out of those parameters. Those are your two categories. Something exists now, so something eternal exists, right? So this is another universal truth. Okay, so therefore either matter or mind is eternal. Or it makes sense, right? So either matter or mind is eternal, and we know that matter is not eternal. As the evidence cited above shows, thus it is the mind that is eternal. So when we say mind, we mean like the spiritual essence of a being, like God, is indeed mind. Is God material in nature? God's immaterial. Yeah, spiritual. Another way of saying that's mind. So that gets us there on that. So the mind is eternal. So this gets us on the fact that the mind is eternal, and that is what has existed in eternity past and in eternity future. So logical syllogism number 2. Everything that exists is either dependent, that is contingent, or independent, non-contingent. Remember, we've talked about this. Contingent, non-contingent things. Now, if the universe is not eternal, it is dependent or contingent, which we realize this, right? The universe is not eternal, therefore the universe is dependent or contingent. If the universe is dependent, it must have been caused by something that is independent or non-contingent. Another way of saying that too is it's what's called a necessary being. But the universe is dependent, contingent. Therefore, the universe was produced. You can correct my typo there. Does yours say produces? Produced by some eternal, independent, non-contingent force. So that's a little more involved. That's a little more technical. And then we come to the third one, which we've already been discussing here. Everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe had a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause. And so, if you were to employ this in speaking with someone, you shouldn't have to waste any time coming to agreement on this. This one, the universe began to exist. Even secular people these days, you shouldn't have to argue too hard on that. But we've provided you with some information that you could explain, and they could even look up. Everybody's got a Googler in their hands these days, right? You Google first and second law of thermodynamics, it wouldn't take you too long to understand that indeed the universe began to exist. It's not eternal. And so when we lay this logic out, then you lay out the fact the universe has a cause. That may be where they're going to pause and say, well, I don't know. And they say, well, you know what, we've been taught in school that everything existed in that one point, and that one point, everything exploded to an existence, and everything went out to its place and then began to cool down, and solar systems and everything started to form, and then all that. We've all heard this before, right? You could shut that down with one simple question. Yeah, where'd the point come from? Because we cannot have an uncaused cause. You can't. The law of cause and effect. So, you know what? We had more to do on that second syllogism. No, we didn't. I was reading from this paper. Yeah. Now, in the past, atheistic evolutionists suggested that the mind is nothing more than a function of the brain, which is matter. Well, I would say, even now, they say that the mind is just the product of matter and chemical reactions. Thus, the mind and the brain are the same, and matter is all that exists. However, the viewpoint no longer is credible scientifically, due in large part to the experiments of the renowned Australian physiologist Sir John Eccles. Dr. Eccles, who won the Nobel Prize for his discoveries regarding how certain portions known as neural synapses of the brain work, documented that the mind is more than merely physical. Well, that's a problem for an atheist, isn't it? Because if the mind is more than physical or matter, then what's your explanation? From an atheist point of view, where are you coming up with? There's not anything really that you could grasp at for the understanding of consciousness and what's happening in the mind. So he showed that the supplementary motor area of the brain may be fired by mere intention to do something without the motor cortex, which controls muscle movements, operating. In effect, the mind is to the brain what a librarian is to a library. The former, the librarian, is not reducible to the latter, the library. Eccles explained his scientific methodology and his conclusions in his work, The Self and Its Brain, a book he co-authored with eminent British philosopher of science, Sir Karl Popper. Scientifically, then, the choice is between matter only and more than matter as the explanation for the existence of orderliness of the universe. The difference, therefore, between the two models is the difference between this: time, chance, and natural properties of matter, or design, creation, and the undeniable properties of an organization and mind. In fact, when it comes to any particular case, there are only two scientific explanations for the origin of the order of the universe and life in the universe. Either the order was imposed upon matter, or it naturally resides within matter. To those who are willing to suggest that the order resides naturally within matter, we simply respond by saying that we certainly have not seen any evidence of such. Furthermore, the scientific and philosophical evidence that we do possess speaks loudly and clearly to the existence of an independent, eternal, self-existent mind that created this universe and everything in it. Try as they might, skeptics are unable to avoid the obvious implications of the law of cause and effect. However, that has not stopped them from trying, and they therefore have leveled countless arguments against it. For example, one such argument insists that the idea must be false because it is inconsistent with itself. The argument goes something like this: the principle of cause and effect says that everything must have a cause. On this concept, it then traces all things back to a first cause, where it suddenly stops. But how may it do so and remain consistent? Why does the principle that everything needs a cause suddenly cease to be true? Why is it that this so-called first cause does not likewise need some kind of cause? Okay, so this is a fancy way of saying what a little kid would say, who created God? In fact, Sherlonda asked us this one time. I thought I heard a voice. Yes, so the answer to this is really not that hard. Because if you're looking for something that's a first cause, we've already established that it's something that must be eternal, that must be infinite, that must be self-existent, it must be self-determining. All those things we've said, it's summed up in that first. The reason why they're saying it doesn't make sense is because they're not allowing themselves to go to the realm of, well, there must be something supernatural. Certainly. Yeah, that's what we see when we look at the laws of nature, the laws of logic. These are the things that God has set in motion. And then the natural universe continues to exist and operate according to those laws. Another way that we could say this too is if there are laws, there must be a lawgiver. So if we talk about the first and second laws of thermodynamics, if we talk about the laws of logic, if we talk about the laws of, or the things that are found within mathematics, if we talk about those kind of things, if those things do in fact exist, and if they are laws, then there must be indeed a lawgiver. And so what we see is that God did set things in a natural state of affairs where these laws govern its existence. So, the question that this opposition is boiling down to is, like I said, if just to put it very simply, who created God? You know, they're saying that you can't have. They're saying you can't have a first cause. You cannot have a first cause in a materialistic universe. Their brains locked into that worldview and understanding, so they're like, well, this makes no sense. It makes no sense because you're not allowing yourself to realize what is indeed the truth, and the truth is that this universe has a supernatural first cause. So, if everything needs an explanation or a cause, why does the first cause also not need an explanation or a cause? Again, because it's always existed. So, we may offer two responses to such a complaint against the principle of causality. First, it is absolutely impossible logically to defend any concept of infinite regress. Remember, we go way back, we talked about that idea of infinite regress. You just can't keep following the dominoes back. Eventually, you're going to find the starting point. We agree with that. That suggests an endless series of effects with no ultimate first cause. Philosophers have argued that point correctly for generations. Whatever begins to exist must have a cause. Nothing causeless happens. That's this. That's that. Second, the complaint offered by unbelievers suggesting that the law of causality is inconsistent with itself is not a valid objection against the law. Rather, it is an objection to an incorrect statement of that law. If someone were to say everything must have a cause, then the objection might be valid. But this is not what the law of causality says. It states that every material effect must have an adequate cause. An example of a material effect would be have a beginning. Ultimately, at some point in the distant past, there must be a pure first cause that is non-material in nature. So, in conclusion, as we wrap this up here, the law of cause and effect and the cosmological argument for the existence of God based upon that law have implications in every area of human life. The universe is here and therefore must have an adequate antecedent cause. So it have implications in every area of human life. To illustrate the law of cause and effect, one scientist, R.L. Wysong, referred to the following historical event. Some years ago, scientists were called to Great Britain to study orderly patterns of concentric rocks and holes, an archaeological find eventually designated as Stonehenge. As studies progressed, it became quite apparent that these patterns had been designed specifically for the purpose of allowing a variety of astronomical predictions. Many questions, for example, how ancient peoples were able to construct an astronomical observatory, how the data resulting from their studies were used, remain unsolved. But one thing we know with certainty, the cause of Stonehenge was intelligent design. Now compare Stonehenge to a situation paralleling the origin of the universe and of life itself. We study life, observe its functions, contemplate its complexity, which highly intelligent men cannot duplicate, even using the most advanced scientific methods and technology. And what are we to conclude? Who would believe that Stonehenge might have been produced by the erosion of a mountain, or by catastrophic natural forces working in conjunction with meteorites to produce rock formations and concentric holes? What scientist or philosopher ever would suggest such an idea? And you know what's funny? If there was someone standing there that suggested those things, they'd be laughed out of the scientific community. Wouldn't they? Now, something as simple as some stones with holes set up, right? But why would they be free to say that Stonehenge was indeed created? And why would no reputable scientist ever refute that? But when we come to the origin of all things, they would be willing to take that step. What would motivate a scientist to do that? And this is important that we understand this. Why would the same scientists who would look at Stonehenge and say, there's no way this was created by natural forces? Okay, preconceptions. Let's keep rolling with that. So that's part of it, but I think we want to make sure we flesh this out completely. Okay. Right. Yeah, it's because of the implications. What are the implications of saying that Stonehenge was created for their own lives? Right, but what are the implications for that scientist if we say that that's created? Does it change his life at all? No. Doesn't, right? But what if we apply the same exact logic to how everything got here in the first place? Well, I can't do that because that means I'm now accountable to a creator, and we're not willing to go there. And so we always need to remember those fundamental ideas that they're not allowing that as even a possibility. And look at the leaps that they must make to say that Stonehenge was, no reputable scientist in the world would say that was time and chance and natural forces. But to say everything got here that way, and what's more highly designed, Stonehenge or the solar system? Stonehenge or us? Stonehenge or a single cell creature? Stonehenge or the earth itself, our atmosphere, the moon? So, no reputable scientist would ever say, or philosopher would ever suggest such an idea. No one in his right mind could be convinced that Stonehenge just happened by accident. Yet atheists, agnostics, and skeptics expect us to believe that this highly ordered, well-designed universe and all the complicated life that it contains just happened. To accept such an idea is irrational because the conclusion is unreasonable, it's unwarranted, and unsupported by the facts at hand. The cause simply is not inadequate to produce the effect. Now, this type of reasoning applies not only to the universe, but also to those of us who inhabit it. We possess certain undeniable traits: the ability to reason, the ability to know, the ability to act rationally. But what is the origin of such critically important traits? The theory of evolution certainly has no adequate answer. Philosopher Norman Geisler put it, quote, "The cause cannot give what it does not have to give. If my mind or ability to know is received, then there must be a mind or knower who gave it to me. The intellectual does not arise from the non-intellectual. Something cannot arise from nothing." Dr. Geisler is absolutely correct. If we as humans possess the capability to reason, then there must be an adequate cause standing behind that capability, a cause that possesses the ability to reason. If we as humans possess the capability to know, then there is an intellectual side to our makeup. Then there must be an adequate cause for standing behind that capability, an intellectual cause that possesses the ability to know. If we as humans possess the capability to act rationally, then there must be adequate cause standing behind that capability, a cause that is capable of acting and acting rationally. Simply put, the central message of the cosmological argument and the law of cause and effect upon which it is based is this: every material effect must have an adequate cause. The universe is here. Intelligent life is here. Morality is here. Love is here. What is their adequate cause? Since the effect never can come before or be greater than, the cause then stands to reason. Then it stands to reason that the cause of life must be a living intelligence that itself is moral and ethical and loving. When the Bible records, "In the beginning God," it makes known to us just such a first cause. Okay, so on the conclusion there, it's the first blank is "have implications in every area." To accept such an idea is irrational. The last blank, you hopefully got that one. "In the beginning, God." All right, any questions or comments about the cosmological argument? You all right there? You sure? All right, I'll be right back. Okay. Bless you. All right, everybody has this, I assume, that what's that? All right, it's quiz time. Don't get your papers. All eyes up here. Come on. What's the first premise in the cosmological argument? No. Say it. Did you? Okay, everything that begins to exist has a cause. Second one? Yeah. The universe began to exist. Therefore, The universe has a cause. This is something that we should have. It should be easy to commit to memory. Alrighty. So now we're going to move to Lesson 6, the existence of God, and we're going to be talking now about design. This is my favorite right. This is my favorite one. So one of the laws of thought used in the field of logic, we've already talked about this, is the law of rationality. This law states that a person should accept as true only those conclusions for which there is adequate evidence. This makes good sense, because a person who accepts conclusions for which there is no evidence or inadequate evidence would be irrational. In discussing the case for God's existence, theists use logic, clear reasoning, and factual data to present arguments that are adequate to justify the conclusion that God exists. The evidence used to prove the theist position concerning God's existence may take many forms. The different arguments presented by theists all combined make an extremely strong, irrefutable case for God's existence. Taken as a whole, the evidence is adequate to justify the conclusion that God exists. Now, in this lesson, we're going to present and discuss more evidence which proves that indeed God exists. So let's talk about the teleological argument. Now, in order to prove the existence of God, theists often use what is known as the teleological argument. Teleology is a word that refers to purpose or design. Thus, this approach suggests that where there is design, there must be a designer. So let's work out the logical form. You get this wrong, you're going to be in trouble. You know why? It's right there on your paper. Every what? Yeah. Okay. Now, universal truth. Is there any case where this wouldn't be true? So you're going to have a hard time or spend a long time getting to agreement on this point? Universal truth. It's pretty simple, right? 2, what's it say? The universe, has a highly complex design. That which must logically follow then, therefore, all righty. Yeah, because you come back to that phrase, every material effect must have an adequate cause. And so the adequate cause must be greater than. In this case. Oh, you guys are starting to really, you guys are using philosophy and logic. How about that? Love it. So, the correct form of logical reasoning and the implications that flow from it have not escaped the attention of those who do not believe in God. Even unbelievers understand that one does not get a poem without a poet, a law without a lawgiver, a painting without a painter, or design without a designer. However, even though many unbelievers admit that design demands a designer, they deny that there is any design in nature sufficient to establish the existence of a great designer. So what they will concede is, and I want to say I believe it was Richard Dawkins who says that the universe looks designed but isn't designed. It has the appearance of design but is not designed. It's evolved. He doesn't. And it's really illogical and nonsensical. Because when we see natural processes set in motion, do we see the gaining of information in structure or the loss of information in structure? Yeah, things become less organized through natural processes. Leave a house empty for a year. You're going to come back and make, holy mackerel, somebody put in a pool. And it's just by itself. What's going to happen to the house? It's going to deteriorate. It's not going to magically just spawn a new wing. The solarium, right? Is that at your home? So you did she's the designer. Yeah. You're proving our point here. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but if you leave something completely alone, it's going to deteriorate. And that's natural processes don't produce order. They produce disorder. When we get into talking about like animals and we talk about genetic information, the genetic information is always lost, not gained. So you don't ever gain genetic information when things happen. It's always moving from a point of more information to less information. Just for example, you guys seen the commercial for, I think it's blue something dog food. What is blue buffalo, right? And it's the spirit of the wolf lives in every dog, right? That's true. Because if we want to say that there was a parent set of dogs, right? Remember we talked about the Human Genome Project that said that we found out that if you trace all the mitochondrial DNA of every human, it traces back to one man, one woman. And we were like, go figure, right? Same thing with animals. So you take those wolves that have all the genetic information present within them for every type of dog that's from the Great Dane to the Poodle, is all present in that one set of parent animals. So when we get down to a purebred animal, it's actually genetically, information-wise, the bottom of the totem pole. Because a purebred animal can only produce. See, a mutt actually has more genetic information, but it's never more than the original two, than the total amount was there. Does that make sense? Yeah, well. Yeah. So, I've been called a lot of things. So, now the disagreement between the person who believes in God and the person who does not has nothing whatsoever to do with whether design demands a designer. Rather, the point of contention is whether or not there is design in nature adequate to prove the conclusion that a designer does exist. This is where the teleological argument comes into play. So, think of our path for the last argument. Easy peasy, right? So where must we invest our time? Here, right? So we must have an understanding of how, or the evidence for, that the universe indeed has a highly complex design. Universal truth, we need to be able to show and prove this. If the universal truth, and then we can show that this is indeed true, then we logically get our third thing. So we must be able to say and show that the universe is indeed shows highly complex design. So let's spend a little time doing that. We'll just get started here. You know what? this is a good place to stop. We got about 5 minutes